I'm Barton George. I'm Dell's director of our web vertical. And so what this is web vertical is basically we're looking at the needs of developers from startups in the dorm room all the way up to the Facebooks and the Googles. And one of the things that we thought about when we were looking at how do we address the needs of developers is why don't we develop a laptop targeted at developers that runs Ubuntu. And so we had an internal incubation program that just started, and we were able to use that to pitch this idea, and we got funded to develop this. So this is a 6-month project to look at how do we develop an Ubuntu laptop. And it also, we've started off on the XPS 13, which is the Ultrabook that we've put together. If this goes well, we'll probably do a very beefy end configuration as well. So this one here is 6 gigs, and then we're going to have some more of this line coming out, and we should probably pick a very heavy configuration as well. And the way it works is that we've worked with some local developers. Dustin Kirkland, who you may know, formerly of Canonical and part of the community, was one of those people. And we put together a very small list of utilities for the basic install. The idea would be, and I think Mark explained it this morning, is you'd start off with those basic utilities, but if you wanted to start personalizing your laptop, you'd go out to a GitHub repository and you'd pull down profiles. So if you were an Android developer, you'd pull down the Android profile. If you were a Ruby developer, you'd pull down Ruby profile, etc. And so what we've done is we've done hardware enablement for this. We've got the basic utilities, and we've got this idea of pulling down profiles. And then as far as hardware enablement, the one that we're still wrestling with is the multi-touch support on the trackpad here, particularly palm rejection. And I think Dustin can tell you about that firsthand. It's kind of frustrating if you brush it. At this point, your cursor will leak. So that's something we're working with the vendor who provides it. Then the longer term vision, so that's what we're doing right now. Then the longer term vision, which is really what Mark had thought about, is this idea of let's really link this from the client all the way out to the cloud. So you can develop microclouds on your laptop. This is something that Elliot had been thinking about for quite a while, is let's develop microclouds on the cloud and then on the laptop, and then in the DevOps kind of a way, let's push that same microcloud to test and then into production. So you have a seamless front end to back end experience. And that's sort of the vision that what we're doing. So what I'd be interested in hearing from folks is what you think of the idea, what you would want in something like this, either for enabling the laptop itself, or in fact, I'm happy to pass this one around.
Can we walk that around?
Yeah. And you can take a look at it and check it out. But any thoughts, comments, concerns? Mr. Castro.
So these are Ultrabooks. What's the maximum amount of RAM on them?
On this one right here is 4.
Okay.
And we will do in the fall, there will be one coming out that'll be beefier.
Okay.
And then as I was saying, we will probably also look, this is the slimmest of the slim, so this will go up, this will have more, but then we'll also look for the big brother of this, which is coming out very soon, that will be pretty beefy. And so we would probably do, the way I position as a Beauty and the Beast lineup, right? This is the Beauty, and we have some Beast for big, beefy types.
Because the big data folks probably need like the maximum amount of RAM you can get in a laptop, period.
That's actually good. So just show of hands, who here has 4 gigs? Okay, that's pretty cool. How many have 8? 16. 32? Okay, we maxed out, or is there someone who's like 128 gigs or something? No? Okay. All right, so that's actually pretty good to know that there's a fair amount of people who can, that 4 works for. But I'd just be interested in what is everyone using today as their laptop? Just tell me who's got a Mac in here? Raise your hand if you got a Mac. HP, never heard of them. Is that an Ultrabook or no? No, it's not.
Yeah, Elite Book.
Okay.
No, it's
not
a little thicker.
Okay. So, and then who has the Mac Air? Okay. What about, so they're HP ThinkPads, Asus ThinkPads. How many people have Ultrabooks in here? So that's one Ultrabook there. Anybody else have an Ultrabook? Okay, there you go. You guys are cheaters. These guys work for Dell and have the XPS 13. How many people have Dells that aren't, how many people have Dells here that don't work at Dell, I should say? Okay. Okay, cool. ThinkPads? Okay. So I think I'm judging by some people who are raising their hands a couple times, they have multiple units. Who here, okay, so here's the thing. Who has more than one unit they do work on, right? So forget your personal one, but have at least 2 or maybe 3. Okay. So just some more thoughts on what you'd like to see. What do you guys think of this idea? Would you buy one of these? What do you need to know about it?
I wish you were selling them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would buy one, but I would want to see the enablement done because
Right.
I raised my hand for 2 laptops because I have an Alienware. That's the one I prefer to use, but it's not entirely enabled. So when I travel to something I'm going to do a presentation, I'll bring my MacBook instead.
And what are the things that are not enabled? Is like projection?
Yeah, hybrid graphics.
Okay. Also, just so I don't forget, if you guys want to, if you want to put your name here on this, you don't have to, but if you want to make the marketing guys happy, if you want to put your name, company, email address, if you want to learn about Sputnik, you can put your name here. Or if you want to have somebody from sales talk to you about another topic, you can do that. If you don't want to, you don't have to. No pressure, but I'll just pass this around.
I guess, Bart, maybe another good question is to see who in the audience is actually sort of a DevOps type of person, people that are developing for cloud deployment. I know, Elliot, you do a lot of that, but
I'm demoing a lot of other people's DevOps stuff.
right. So, in terms of like how you would use Juju to architect and deploy something like that, I mean, how much of what you need from Juju is sort of tied to the horsepower of the hardware
So
itself?
I need LXC containers, so I can do the cloud on the laptop that's like the whole point, before I waste money solving obvious bugs, right? So basically, test on LXC all day, then push out to the cloud and see if it works.
So what do you mean waste money? Do you waste time? I mean, how does it?
No, so I want to rev on the laptop as close as I can to my public cloud thing, so that when I am ready to, maybe once a day do a push and do tests there, that, I don't have stupid syntax errors because I can rev so fast on my laptop.
So it's like a sandbox.
Yeah. And I currently use my desktop because, SSD and as much RAM as I can put into it, and basically the more amount of LXC containers I can run on one machine, then the better I can do.
So when you push from your laptop to the cloud, I know you're replicating those instances in the workloads. Are you replicating data as well? I mean, is that a big data push?
You could. The charm I use just pulls from an S3 bucket. So depending on how big the bucket is with my backups and stuff, we'll do that. But that's more of a bandwidth limitation than a...
Right.
So in other words, to rephrase the question, would a 128 gig SSD be limiting to the work you do today as a DevOps for
So that is interesting. I mean, how the LXC containers are relatively lightweight, right? Each one.
Yeah, they're pretty small. So I think the 256 gig SSD is really, really attractive. Currently, I do a bunch of work on a machine with 8 gigs of RAM and an 80 gig SSD. So that having the SSD is more important than having tons of space, but I'm constantly having to prove stuff on there.
So you think a sweet spot is 256 SSD?
256 SSD and whether or not you sell it with 8 gigs of RAM, like having it be an upgradable machine, like just knowing there's an option, is really, really attractive.
And we do today, right?
Which one?
On XPS 13Z, you have the option to upgrade it all the way to 8 gigs, right?
I don't
I don't think so.
It's under the
Caps
board.
Not yet.
It's under the board.
That's right. So you can upgrade.
So that's sort of the challenge with, I think, the Ultrabook form factor is, the upgradability is a little bit limited in that regard.
Right.
But it's the same issue with a MacBook Air, right? I mean, like, you can't go to 8 gigs on it.
But does MacBook Air sell different configs to meet the needs of?
I know.
No, they just have 4. That I do know.
I think it's just all 4 in terms of the RAM. I think they differ on processor. I think you can go from like i5 or i7, and you can go from 128 to 256 SSD. But
This one, there's 3 versions of this you can get right now, which is, they're all 4 gigs, but within that, you have an i5 or an i7, and then you can go 128 or 256, if I'm not, does that sound right?
yeah.
And so this is the one that I've got here is the big one with 256 plus, well, actually not this one, I should say, the one that I gave, probably you've got.
I've got it.
Yeah, it is, us marketing guys get the lightweight stuff, is up there.
So George, in terms of what you and Elliot see at like DevOps conventions, what is the really attractive thing from a hardware perspective? Is it that it's light and thin, or is it, are these people running Ubuntu on MacBook Air, they're running Mac OS, or?
I run OS 10 on MacBook Air.
Okay. And what would some of the challenges be? I mean, like, you're not deploying that on OS X Cloud, right? You're going to deploy that on Ubuntu or maybe probably some other Linux, right?
Right.
So you're using Ubuntu in virtual machines, like using a tool like Vagrant. And that's why you want a lot of memory, is because you have all these virtual machines running.
Right.
What's so attractive about this machine, and what especially combined with Ubuntu, is that it's every bit as nice to hold and carry around as an Air, but you're using Ubuntu natively, which means you get some of the capabilities that just don't exist in OS 10, like LXC containers being super lightweight. So now I can run 100 containers instead of 4 VMs.
Gotcha.
And I can do like much more sophisticated stuff in the network stack.
Okay.
So from a software perspective, what other things are, we mentioned LXC containers, what else? Most important?
Well, you're gonna have the basic tools on there like Git and stuff.
Right, good. Juju, of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, is there any developer environment set up?
Yeah, so one of the things, if we can talk about the profiles for a little bit, because I know like every Ruby developer just skips anything packaged and just goes to RVM or whatever the other one is, RVM or something. So I don't know I think that might be attractive for people who are used to using OS 10, and the concept of installing old, out-of-date, broken Ruby packages in Ubuntu is like a deal breaker for them. You want it to be the exact same as it is on their Mac.
So Barton, from the conversations that you've had with, potential, customers in like cloud, companies that are doing a lot of cloud development, do you know is the developer setting up their own machine, or are they being handed a machine that's already pre-installed with an OS and with a development environment, and they just get cracking starting on the coding, or are they expected to assemble that development environment?
Depends on the size of the company. So two of the large companies I talked to about this, they're basically going to be setting up their own image on here. So the thing that's most important for them is that we together, meaning Dell and Canonical, assure that hardware enablement is made, is constantly, when we refresh that to a different processor or whatnot, that it's completely supported.
And then the developer toolchain stuff is something they would integrate themselves?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, without mentioning company names, there's that. Yeah, that's the part for themselves that they would do it themselves. But when you talk about smaller companies, and we'll talk to Dustin works at a smaller company now. How would you say? You're about what, 20 people?
22, yep.
Okay, so
Shortest now.
yeah, exactly. 22. That's what, 10% or no, 5%? What was it? But anyway, 10%, right? That I was off. But when you guys do I remember talking to you guys, and you guys have a whole variety of different laptops, right? When you asked, what do you guys use? Each one of you had your own kind of thing. Do you have an image that you install, or is it sort of everyone just pulls down what they need?
Everyone pulls down what they need. Probably 2/3 of those are Ubuntu, and a smattering of Arch and Fedora instead. We don't really insist on what someone runs on their primary desktop, and then we use cloud images or virtual machines, and then do most of our development on Ubuntu. And then from there, we've got requirements from customers to run on other forms of Linux. If there were a developer image available, our machine that came pre-installed with Ubuntu, we'd be all over that.
And then what do you think of this, the concept of, as we say with these profiles, where it would be a basic lowest common denominator install, and then could you see you guys doing the Gazang Ruby profile or whatever it is, the Gazang Erlang profile that you do? Or would you pull down stuff from there, or what would be?
We're going to do our development in a clean room in a VM or a cloud image. We need something to access that, and that's what this is. But I mean, the stuff we're working on crashes pretty regularly. I'd rather crash a cloud image than crash my desktop.
What about instead of preloading, I don't know if you're thinking about preloading versus offering profiles within the software center.
And that's what we're thinking.
Okay.
This idea is that, hey, everyone's going to want to pick their own thing. They don't want it all bloated up with stuff. So I'd much rather have it just a real thin layer, and then I'll customize it myself. And that's the model that we're looking at right now. And go out to sort of a Git repository and picking what you'd want. And then the idea would be we'd start off with, say, 3 profiles like Android, Ruby, and JavaScript, and then hopefully the community would pick it up and start building their own profiles to add to it. So you have a whole library there that you could choose from.
Maybe the tool already exists, but the basic tool to kickstart that process, do you see that as being like a simple Python user interface, like a GUI, where you can choose what type of environment that you want, or do you see it more of a command line tool where you drop down and
We haven't gotten that far, but I don't think it would be command line. I think it would be pretty simple. We talked to OpsCode about maybe helping us out with this. We're talking about maybe doing it through Canonical, but that's something we want to put together pretty quickly so we can get this functionality there. But we do want to make it pretty user friendly. I wouldn't, unless other people have other ideas, I would not want to do command line. But what do others think?
I mean, you can
No,
also,
the people that do this stuff are command line people, I think it'd be for like the beginning computer science student who wants to get into Ruby, right? That will be fine, but I think a professional, like the Dustins of the world, just go straight for the terminal and do it that way.
There's only one of me, dude.
Thank God.
You
Did I say that out
gotta
loud?
remember, this is what, as soon as these guys get a new computer, they've got their own little ways of doing things, right? This is only just one line to that same script they've been carrying around for years.
I kind of mentioned that to Barton in the pub, but yeah, there's almost no Linux image that I'm going to take straight from a manufacturer. I'm going to change the partitioning. I'm going to configure it in a certain way. I don't see nearly as much value in a pre-installed image as knowing that the hardware I'm buying, I'd pay $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 if I knew all of my hardware was going to work like a champ in Ubuntu when I bought that hardware. And for the people who are working for me, we need to get them a new laptop, and we're just going to get them, the XPS 13 because everything works on that, and they can then install what we tell them to and get to work. And then in terms of the developer stack, I really like the concept of a seed or meta package or something like that that includes the Ruby development stack. And we've got this Ubuntu DevTools package, just what you need to install if you want to package Ubuntu software. If there were similar meta package stacks for doing Java development, doing Python development, doing device driver, lower, say that again, Node.js or something like that, and then you just add combinations of those on your system. And then, from a cloud perspective, being able to easily Juju Bootstrap run local or run OpenStack inside of your local system using what's the dev stack or the thing that you...
Tristack.org?
Yeah. Oh, I thought
it's DevStack.
DevStack, yeah.
Oh,
where you just fire up a an OpenStack immediately, and then do your development side of that. But this is kind of the portal to getting work done.
So it sounds like what you wouldn't actually take the pre-install image, you'll worry about the partitioning and actually getting the OS installed,
Yep.
but you would be fine with just predefined stacks of, oh, I just want the Node.js stuff. Just
Yeah,
add
the
it.
meta package. After I install sudo apt-get install Rails dev.
Yeah,
tools,
yeah.
Rails dev tools or Eclipse dev tools or something like that. Yeah. And the predefined image, go for it if you want. There's no chance that me or my developers would really use
So-
that. Knowing that that all hardware work is far enabled is far more important.
So there's a little bit of a conflict there in the sense that in order to get that sort of really tight integration to make sure that like everything works, like all the hotkeys and all the components in the machine, typically we have a hard time always doing that in stock Ubuntu because each machine is different, right? And so it's hard to make the stock image that you would download as tight as the factory image that we make. And yet I understand the desire from the developer side to want to build that platform from the ground up just the way that you want it. So I don't have a good idea how to bridge those gaps.
So how about this, right? So since the reality of the fact is that developers like to customize it like from ground up in terms of basic OS partitioning layout to the various profiles of software stacks and whatnot you install. If you look at the focus on what the OEM can bring to the table, it's hardware enablement. That's our strength. We do a good job providing that platform that the developers can. So I think, would it be more prudent to focus on the hardware enablement aspect versus the different profiles we're talking about? And if so, if the hardware enablement can come in a preloaded image, because let's say Dustin gets a preloaded image, he's going to do some surgery to figure out what the delta between this and the stock is. If I wipe this and put the stock, what do I lose? You don't know. So instead, if we focused on providing them in a very granular form, those set of individual packages, yes me, which so Dustin, these are the 1204 based 20 packages in a repository, right? That we call them fish packages or whatever internally.
So this is kind of something that we've been wanting to do in general for our Dell enablement.
Yes.
And having a separate archive for anything that we can't have in the Ubuntu archive hardware enablement. And you go and add that PPA or archive, whatever it's going to be, to your system.
Yep.
And the hardware drivers tool jockey will go and see, hey, there's these things that you need to install that couldn't be in the Ubuntu
Right.
stock, and it'll fix all your hardware for you.
Yeah, and asynchronous from the Ubuntu developer or the Ubuntu
Yeah.
development cycle it's fine with me,
So that way you get to start with your base
Yeah.
and pull these packages.
Yeah.
The human readable text with each package, you could say, oh, I don't want to install this package. And you have a choice even in that suite of packages which one you want to pull, right?
Exactly.
Let me come back and challenge this a bit, right? Because like we've been talking about MacBook Air being a popular platform for cloud development, right? And I'm guessing that most of those DevOps guys just use the pre-install image that comes on it straight from Apple.
Is it?
I'm guessing. I don't know. Do people wipe it and do?
People put alternative bootloaders on it, and they hack the hardware, and you'd be amazed how much hacking goes on.
But a lot of people leave OS X on there, and you said that they were running VMs.
They also use external package managers as well. There's multiple archives and package managers for Mac, so that you can go and get newer versions of free software or versions of free software that aren't in Mac by default. I've come across at least 3 different package managers that have packaged Byobu for Mac. And there's multiple ways of installing it.
So let me ask the question a different way. How many people in the room have bought a machine with Ubuntu preloaded on it from a manufacturer? Right. 3, 4, right? So my point is, from the canonical perspective, we'd love to get those numbers up of people that have bought a preloaded image. It's one of the things that is sort of a challenge for us, is because we know that our user base is far larger than is actually counted in terms of like pre-installed sales, right? And if my question is, where would the need come from to wipe the machine and want to put stock Ubuntu on it if it was available with a really tightly integrated factory image? Is it purely a partitioning thing, or are there other?
Partitioning is the first thing that comes to mind. I want my home partition on a separate partition in the base OS. I want 20 gigs for my base OS because Ubuntu user and var should never get bigger than 20 gigs, and I want the rest of the hard drive on a separate partition so that I can rotate the Ubuntu install and not the other one. I want temp on tempfs. Easy to do after the fact, but I don't want swap at all. Swap's stupid. And that's, if I go through the installer, I get to make those choices. If the manufacturer's chosen that for me, I hope they chose the right thing, but I've yet to see a manufacturer disable swap, make tempfs, and put home on a separate partition.
With something like tempfs, if it's configurable easily afterwards, then I guess it's a matter of where do you want to spend your time, like doing a fresh install or making that tweak. I mean, Gary, from a product perspective, I mean, is there some sort of partitioning scheme that would be generally, acceptable to the most number of?
I don't think it's a question of Ubuntu having bad defaults. I think it's a question of developers being super finicky, opinionated. Like, Dustin has a very opinionated setup, and that's great. I have a different opinionated setup.
You're talking to a person who reinstalls OS on their phone and their router.
Whereas I never run separate partitions.
So if your limitation is OS partitions, what if we provided an image that you can run through with all of our preloaded stuff and you still have the partitioning questions asked?
Yep. Having the partitioning option would be a tremendous step in the right direction from an OEM install standpoint. I don't know how easy that's going to be to do.
What is that like, Steve, if we put, for DevOps, if we had the partitioning part of Ubiquity in OEM config? We already have the recovery partition, right?
Well, so you have to have something on the disk that executes. So presumably that is a recovery partition. In this case, your boot is actually off the recovery partition. It puts in the installer that says, here's your computer. How do you want to set up the disk? It's just a matter of coding it.
Yeah, but really, the big concern is having to reinstall, but it's only a subset of people that would want to do that. It sounds to me like an option. For $5, now I get a USB key that has the install.
The other challenge with the reinstall is it's not just simply a matter of making drivers available, right?
Yeah.
That part's pretty easy, but frequently we have to do some like hardware specific tweaks, whether it's command line stuff or to twiddle the way that the BIOS works. I mean, it's before it ships, right? And we're able to embed that at the factory, and so then the user experience is very smooth. But it's not something you could like package up in Jockey because it is very platform specific.
We can do things like
I mean,
you're
is
running
there
a Dell
some- is there-
XPS 13.
I mean, we've done hardware specific hacks through Jockey down to the model number.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Within recent versions of our spec, we should be able to do that.
Okay.
That'd be a nice value. If I would find a Dell machine, I would pay $5 add a USB key.
Then I guess the question is, for a larger company that was maybe buying, let's say, 100 of these at a time, would they just maybe it's not a matter of personal developer preference, more a matter of corporate IT policy, and we put our corporate master image on there. So we need a way of solving that as well, so that the drivers and the config and all the stuff that they need a way of integrating that into their corporate master image.
We could also preload a static image with a static partition scheme, and just the way we've been doing Somerville, and make a downloadable image, which does this. It comes up in a special OEM config mode that allows you to actually manually pick your partitioning mode, and so we kind of covered both the bases.
Yeah.
So we've got these people who are happy to get a preloaded image. Everything works out of the box, as long as they promise to keep updating me through the life of this OS. And then for the enthusiasts or over enthusiasts who want to like really do surgery in the system and like really serve the way they want, they've got the option to start up a little more to the left, and we still make the packages also available. So if someone's already wanting to install their favorite version of I don't know, Ubuntu, and then they want just these driver hardware enablement packages, they could. So I had a question for the DevOps people here. So LTS is the preferred environment for most developers because most of the ISVs certify based on LTS. Is that true? So essentially, if the project Sputnik launched with 12.04, 12.04.1 as an initial baseline, when 12.10, 13.04 start to come out, do you guys normally rev to the latest? I mean, what's the ecosystem like there? You guys stay on the dot releases of the LTSs?
Yeah, so starting with 1204, we're doing something different where we're kind of having that release be more long-lived. Especially with, the Juju charm store not freezing, things like that. So we think that would be. Working in Canonical, I'm a special case, so I have to dog food. So I try to hold off on the LTS as long as I can. But I would think that the typical person, as long as they can get what they want on the cloud or when they're doing their work, then I think the LTS will be just fine.
So there's sort of three different views. So one is the view of what do I want running on my laptop where I'm actually listening to music and doing whatever, browsing the web. What do I want running in my data center from the point of view of a cloud operator?
Right.
And what do I want running what am I going and launching in the cloud as someone who's developing a web service that runs in the cloud?
Right. So I'm interested in the number 3. I think we're targeting number 3, right? It's not the consumer. Consumers normally rare from non-LTS to get the latest bling.
Well, but a DevOps person is still running something on there. I mean, they still want to listen to music as well.
So in my data center, I'm going to be running 1204, 1204.1, and so on, and I'm going to keep that around for a very long time. What my fleet of developers actually pushes into cloud images is going to start on 1204, but it's probably not going to stay on that for a full 2 years. Because some of the services will move to newer versions because the next hot NoSQL database that's I want to put in production in 18 months from now is not going to be in 1204.1. So, but that's okay because it's a cloud machine. I care much more about the network interface.
Those would be
like
guest images, right?
Yeah, they'd be guest images. And what I want on my laptop where I'm listening to music, I'm not going to want to keep the same thing for 18 months. I'm going to want that updated. But what I'm running on the metal in my data center that my cloud is running on top of is going to be 1204.1.
So if you were to think about how we sustain the program and then the life cycle, we would treat it as a normal consumer machine where we try to stay up to date with even the non-LTS updates within LTS or the really non-LTS releases.
So some of those cloud guests are still going to be older, right? There's nothing wrong with them. My Postgres hasn't changed. I'm going to keep that around. And so even though I'm upgrading my laptop to 1310, the fact that I can still launch a 1204 image in an LXC container is going to be super useful.
So is there not a tight coupling between your developer toolchain and your the bare metal OS running on?
They're very deliberately separate, and that's why it works on the OS kind of thing.
That's good to know.
It's containers. You want a container that looks exactly like it's running in the cloud.
So it's not that the host is exposing some shared libraries that someone else is dependent on. It's completely quarantined.
Bart, any other thoughts from you?
No, I'm just trying to think if there's just a bunch of different vectors that we're gonna go off on. To get real tactical, I want to make sure that we get the Palm rejection thing nailed first.
Yeah.
And so whatever we can do on both sides to make that happen, I think that'll be something we don't want to. So Dustin, you found that to be a real pain.
I almost threw it off my balcony at one point. It's driving me bonkers.
I'm old school. Can you explain what palm rejection is?
It's just he'll
So beautiful keyboard. This chiclet keyboard is awesome. You can really, really fly through the keys. But where your palms sit on it, your palms kind of touch the touchpad. So you're in the middle of an email, and your palm rests in the wrong way, and the cursor goes over here and clicks a button, which might be send, or turns your focus to your VI window, and you keep typing, the rest of your word, and VI is doing all sorts of crap. It's absolutely hair-raisingly annoying. Palm rejection, there's a handful of heuristics that can be used to determine when you're typing and disable the input of the touchpad, but switch that back and forth in fractions of a second. So there's a couple of ways.
So it's like real time disable while I'm typing, disable touchpad while I'm typing.
More or less, yeah. And as I don't, Mario can probably explain it better than me, but what this is not recognized as a touchpad device right now. It's being recognized as a.
It just thinks it's a regular mouse right now.
Yeah, it is.
Is that where the taps are not working?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
there's
also
no
one-touch
multi,
typing.
there's no multi-touch, there's no taps, there's no two-finger scrolling,
Okay.
there's no scroll on the side or bottom.
Okay.
And all of that is like subtly annoying. It'd be cool if we had those features, but putting the mouse pointer somewhere else while you're typing is, it's like, I'm gonna kill someone right now.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is I just want to make sure that if somebody, even though in my blog I called it out and said this, I don't want someone to get it, one of these now, pay good money for it, try it, and just say, oh my God, it's just, I can't, I'm going to throw it off the balcony, right? So I think it's that little bit right now that I'd like to make sure that we can figure out how to do it as quickly as possible. I think, Mario, you talked about some interim solution maybe?
We're going to try to look at other solutions possibly. I'm trying to make it seem like it's a touchpad, even though we don't support the vendor yet.
Because I'm wondering if we can package up all the press we've gotten around this and send it to them. I'm trying to figure out how we either carrot or a stick to make the guys at Cypress,
What are you putting in the beast?
as far as,
Who are you paying money? Who's the touchpad vendor in the beast device? So tell them it's not.
it's not.
Tell them you're going to go use a different touchpad vendor.
I think it's unfortunately it's coming out pretty darn soon. But
that's the way the IHVs move.
yeah.
I mean, that plugs into what Chris Stan was saying, we can be reactive right now, but the procurement's already signed the deal. As long as Skill 13Z is alive, they know they got the business, so you're going to threaten them on the next.
Right.
Which is what Chris was saying, we need to get there when these procurements are getting signed. You need to
Right.
say, are you Linux certified, do you have Linux driver, basic Linux support at least?
Well, you mean say, are you Ubuntu, right?
Yes,
You
yeah,
mean-
of course. Ubuntu equals Linux, right?
This might be off topic to say, but I mean, reverse engineering it, is that even a possibility? Getting something working?
Suppose we're talking about Cypress?
Yeah. How'd you guess?
It's
I know it's not
an-
the first choice, but
It's not an easy endeavor. I think it could take a couple of months. And that's if everything works well.
yeah.
Here's a question. Sorry, I'm late. I was typing away. How much Cypress is out there? It's
Right now we have 2 laptops of Cypress, this and the TZ.
plan for more.
I think there's at least 10 delete reverse engineering going on. So maybe.
I just asked because I hadn't seen.
I mean, if you
this is the
think
first
about
time
it-
I'd actually seen a Cypress device on.
I think we may have more power in this term. A couple of years ago, Elontech was also a touchpad vendor that not everybody in the room who's worked with Somerville remembers not so fondly. They had a proprietary blob and those were working really well. But I think a concerted effort with both Canonical and Dell knocking on their door, got them to come around, and the ODM was also involved in this. We put the pressure on the ODM to hold Elontech accountable. Now, this is a short term. The only risk here is like we really want to race fast on this project.
Right.
We may not have the long lead where we have with Elontech, but we've changed those. Their investment in wanting to not do anything but Windows, but I'm not sure if we can do that in the time span we're wanting to do it.
Elontech now has like functional multi-touch out of the box. On the-
Elontech?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, yes,
I can
Elontech.
do like the Unity
See, and
multi-touch, 3 fingers, 4 fingers, everything.
so we've come a long way playing no support to now them playing nice, just
Mhm.
we're beating from ODM down Canonical. And we should definitely start that with Cypress, at least for the next future generation of.
I'm just afraid that if we don't get it fixed for this, that it's no go, right?
Touchpad is it's a non-starter if your touchpad's not working. I mean, I've personally been the lack of tap is really from mildly annoying to it's getting there.
I mean, ultimately, a component vendor wants you to sell more units because that's more components that they're going to sell, right? I mean, it's probably just a simple business argument to say we've identified a need and we think that we're not able to address this need because of this missing piece, and it's actually in all of our interest to have that piece funded and resourced.
So we'll need to figure out this from the Dell point of view, how we escalate, who we bring in to help with that, and who from the Canonical side. We can talk about that offline, but I'm sure there's certain people we can bring in to help the discussion.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that And that's the table stakes. We got to make sure that we get that done. And then in parallel pathing, also looking at the at what we're going to have them. So the main things are the hardware enablement. There's the profile management piece, and then there's the cloud piece, right? And those are the three main things. And we got to get the hardware enablement done first, and then we also need to, on the profile piece, then. I mean, it sounds like still the same, right? We're talking about a very basic level. I don't know, Dustin, if you saw the list of basic packages that we put, or is that?
I loved it. I mean, I think it's a great start.
Okay, so something like that, and then on top of that would be you'd use you'd pick down profiles on top of that, and that's sort of what you're talking about, right? Or
I mean, a profile would be a meta package, a package that depends or recommends a bunch of other packages. I don't know what you mean by a profile.
Well, so the way we've been using that is your Ruby profile or meta package. Maybe I don't know if we're using it the same way or a different way, but it would just be what you need, the stuff you need to do Ruby development. And there might be somebody who takes it and makes it a Prime 1, right? So my Ruby developer is a little bit different than yours because I have this in it as opposed to that in it.
So one possible way for this to work is you take a Juju charm, or a set of Juju charms, and put in a load balancer and an Apache ModWiki configuration and a set of packages like for running Django, and say, okay, here is a base set of charms that will spin up LXC containers configured in the right way for you to just go and drop in your Django web application. Do the same thing for a Ruby on Rails application, same thing for a Node.js application. And while every single shop will then go and customize those to match their whatever it is that they're building, that's a really nice starting point for actually making stuff run on the machine. And it's a place for you to add to that list of packages. A meta package you have to sign and then upload and then get compiled, even though there's no code in it, and then download and install. And then you have to figure out how to inject that meta package into each LXC container. So I think something at a little bit more of a meta level. It's about what you install on the servers or the containers that you're running inside.
So I mean, in that type of, well, to come back to your example, Dustin. So you got a new developer who joins the company.
Yep.
And he's going to be working inside the same type of dev environment as everybody else, right?
Right.
Or would you envision, even if they do the install of the OS themselves, do they get, how would you help onboard them so that they're getting up to speed, producing code as opposed to fiddling with?
Yeah, great question. So, and right now we buy a machine off of Newegg, something that we know amongst ourselves works well with Linux right now, right? And we've got that waiting for them when they show up, and then we hand it to them and say, install your favorite Linux OS and get to work. If we knew that these were being produced in mass and everything just worked, that would make that what to buy a whole lot easier. We'll just order these when we know that's coming. Having an image available might speed that up slightly.
So I'm talking about the stack above the OS, right? Like, to get their LXC containers set up and everything. I'm wondering because I don't know. Is there a certain way that you would expect that sort of virtualized, that sandbox cloud environment to be set up?
The most sophisticated shops today are doing it with Vagrant. So you walk in and you get handed a Vagrant base box, and off you go, or a set of three to five Vagrant base boxes. Yeah. I think there's some real power with Juju combined with LXC for building something that's even more powerful. I've been talking with the author of Vagrant. In fact, like this microcloud thing, it's going to go through several iterations, but yeah, the most sophisticated places that get somebody pushing code in production the very first day on the job have a virtual machine or some kind of virtualized container that just you push one button and it gives you your basically pre-configured staging environment that matches what you have in production.
Yeah, no, we don't have anything more sophisticated than a Google Doc with onboarding. If you do your first day and it has some package recommendations, if you're running Ubuntu, you probably want this stuff installed. Right. But I mean, they're contributing pretty quickly.
But it sounds, I hear a repeating thing that goes back to enablement. It says, so basically what the driving factor behind the system today is basically enabling.
Yeah.
And that these other software stacks on top of enablement, the software stacks were there.
Yeah.
Those profiles were there, but full enablement's not there. It's almost a,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also go so far, and my CFO might not like this, but it doesn't really matter how much the box costs. We're not trying to save $100 or $200 or $500 here. We pay good money for a laptop. It's going to be someone's laptop for a few years. So just really want to know the
yeah,
hardware's
so
going to work.
I look at this as like the previous session here was at the HP and cloud. They had HP Moonshot and they had HP Odyssey, and I look at this as maybe HP Moonshot in terms of you're trying to get this product out to market, but where your Odyssey is basically that you build from the ground up a box that you know is going to work both on Windows and on Ubuntu.
Well, I think this particular machine is sort of a special case in the sense that it's one of the very few, like Dell platforms that wasn't CentOS 4 enablement, right? So this is a piece that, like in the hardware prototyping phase.
But you don't think of the fact that there's not a driver for, is not, the fact that when it was designed that to bring in that component, the prerequisite for that component to be chosen as part of the part list, as part of the BOM, was that there was a driver that was already committed and, for that.
So, no, I don't disagree. I'm saying that's what makes this particular machine a little bit more of a challenge in the sense that wasn't a criteria when it was initially being designed, whereas most of them are. But
I'll just mention one more thing about it, one more observation as I'm doing more work. I do a lot of work with virtual machines and OpenStack and Juju and stuff locally. It's only got 4 gigs of RAM as opposed to the 8 that I normally use on my desktop. And Mario checked and said they're soldered on the board too. So in a future rev, as much RAM as possible on a machine that's going to run virtual machine. I usually give 4 gigs to my virtual machines, and that's what my hardware has.
So those virtual machines that you're spinning up, where do you get those OS images from? Are you building those yourself, or are they off the shelf somewhere?
Just daily Ubuntu snapshots usually. The
Okay.
ISOs, cdimage.ubuntu.com.
Right.
Usually, if it's not Ubuntu, then it's Fedora or Debian.
Now, are those the right size for you? Are they the right package set, or would you?
It's good enough.
Okay.
And I can go from there.
So I think the underlying focus should be the hardware enablement piece, because as Dustin was saying, the decision-making process is not cost, it's the hardware, limitations in the hardware, which could make you not buy it, like RAM and all that. And to the actual OS enablement piece itself, right? How well the hardware works out of the box, or through a hosted image, or through a set of packages that I can download. In parallel, we can also focus on the profiles that, I don't think we're solving a XPS 13Z specific problem. We're solving that in general. I mean, everybody benefits from that. I think canonical community in general, and Ubuntu community in general, having those kind of profiles. But shouldn't the focus and the energy go towards the hardware enablement piece as a first step, and then serialize that to then evolving into, can we also provide the stuff above the OS to make it? But by doing this, we're not differentiating Dell or this particular model. This is like a nice to have, more like a noble deed that we would be doing if we focused our energy and time on this.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing hardware specific about that development toolchain stack, right? And you could run that on anything. But I think what we could sell here is something that's really tightly integrated on a really great piece of hardware. And maybe the option is, from a bit delivery standpoint, some people may want to buy it pre-installed. We can build you a factory image. Some people are going to want to, install their own thing, but we can give them a great image to start with, right? And so it's Ubuntu plus all the hardware enablement bits and all this stuff, and then they can layer in whatever they want to layer in. It doesn't necessarily have to come out of the factory with that image on it, but we can give them that flexibility.
Real quick, I know we're out of time. We're already trending on Hacker News, which is a good DevOps place to be. Just if you guys want to toss this link into the notes, it's got like 101 comments already, and these are mostly all DevOps people. So
on the
I just pull off my notes thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I have some.
Yeah, you guys might want to review this. This guy's like, better keyboard, slim figure, large special characters, etc., etc. On top of that, I will never consider switching away from a MacBook until the following things are true. Battery life. Forgot about that.
It's really good so far. I'm
Okay.
just about to plug in for the first time today.
Very good suspender zone, 100% every single time.
Yep. So far, so good. Suspender zone's been dynamite.
Good.
We beat the stuffing out of 1110, so in theory, all that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good information here. So
I've only rebooted once since you gave it to me last week, since Monday in a week.
That's awesome.
Great.
So the other thing too is that we've got a couple of big customers that are looking at this, who could buy maybe a couple thousand each. So that's another reason why we're going to send them a unit, and I want to make sure the trackpad is working, because so whatever we need, this is what we need to figure out between the two companies is how do we get our case to build our case with Cypress, and how do we do that, because it's going to really I think both carrot and the stick, right, that we can talk about, hey, this is the big opportunity that we've got, here's potential customers, but we're never going to see any of these units if the trackpad doesn't work. And then also talk about all the publicity and the information, et cetera.
I'm certain there are ways to.
So we do have a program to work with component vendors, so
Sure.
if we haven't shared that with you, I'd like to talk a little bit more.
okay.
I mean, yeah, we probably talk about this offline, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there are ways to convince the right people.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's actually your point, right? Unless we have the thing, we're going to be dead in the water. I think we can parallel path it, but it's still the main focus should be, while we're talking about this great vision we made to, because people will say, someone from Hacker News will get it and say, I tried it and the thing sucked, and I was trying to send an email and what did it do to your Google Mail thing? Put in a sent folder or something like that, or
Just some random numbers, if you're interested. Since the blog post went out, we've had 6 downloads of the ISO, and yesterday we had, where it's hosted, a total of 9 hits, and today we are up to 5,600.
Wow.
It's cool.
so
Being on the
that's-
front page of Hacker News right now is really good for this.
Yeah. So if you guys can, so just for all of us to sell this within our respective companies, if there's any way you can package that data, I need to, because as I said, this is right now it's an incubation project, it's a pilot project. I want to make people in Dell say, oh, this is actually some real interest here. This could really help us as a company and help our customers, because there's a real interest. So the more that I can quantify that type of interest is good.
Yeah.
I mean, I know from my own blog, I don't think I've ever gotten in my life more than like 1,200 hits a day. And before I got on here, it was 600 in the morning, and I went and I thought, well, maybe it'll be up to 800. It's over 3,000. So GigaOM did a really good article on it. The one they put at Hacker News is the one that SiliconANGLE did. Wired wants to talk to me about this. So there's some real interest in this.
Let's start.
So.
Yeah, I'll be sure to share it.
It's pretty cool. I've captured the links on the pad, so that should. You should have a few hundred comments by the end of it. I mean, this is only.
And I should know how
4
to.
hours ago, so.
And I will run anything, any hack, binary driver, whatever that will make this touchpad better. So as soon as anyone has anything they want to test out, I'll
Has anyone heard anything from our friends at Cypress?
Not yet.
We're just talking about how we should approach it.
Yeah, what I'm just thinking is, can we, any of this information that we've just heard here about the hits and the whatever, and say, hey guys, remember that thing we talked about? We just want to show you what public with it, and I didn't, in my blog, I just said we're talking to the vendor. I didn't actually call out their name. I was kind of tempted, but I thought, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to publicly shame them yet. Yeah. So,
Let someone else do it.
yeah, exactly.
Well, great. Barton, thanks for your time.
Okay,
Really
thanks
appreciate it.
everybody. I think we might have a winner here.